Mitch Marner is under fire by the fans, by the media, and it looks like his time is running out as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And it seems like following their brutal Game 7 loss that saw Mitch Marner have a brutal series once again in the playoffs, his time could be coming to an end, and it might be surprising if he returns to the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 1 of the 2025 season. So we're going to break that down in this episode. But before we do, if you are part of the 80% who are not subscribed, make sure to hit that button. It means the world to Darius and I as we're on the road to 9,000 subscribers. If you could hit that button, 10,000 is the big goal, but 9,000, again, if you're part of that percentage, make sure to do that. But Darius, a lot to discuss today, and this is going to be a Mitch Marner focused video. And honestly, this one, we could have made this one right after the game a couple days ago, but we'll just get right into it now. And he's under fire by every single person who you ask, whether you're a Leafs fan, whether you could be a Jets fan, and everyone was just hating on Mitch Marner over the past few days. And you can see this here, and this kind of culminates everything. How did Mitch Marner and Morgan Rielly, two guys who were heavily involved in the OT winner, not speak to the media last night? Interesting. Clearly is an intentional move by the organization. Crazy to think Rielly wouldn't speak. And Rielly, he had an okay series, didn't have anything too special. But Darius, we're going to get into this now in a second. What are your thoughts on this specific quote before we get into the play that Mitch Marner is under fire for?
Thought it was a little weird, not gonna lie. I think obviously you want to hear from the big guys like Matthews and Nylander, which we did, and obviously Sheldon Keefe. But the fact that you have Mitch Marner who wears a letter not speaking to the media after you lose in overtime of Game 7 in one of the biggest games in Maple Leafs recent history, because obviously this was to determine what they're going to do in the future in the coming weeks, because things are going to change. And even Morgan Rielly too has worn a letter in his time here, and he's been here the longest out of anyone. The fact that those two didn't speak to the media, and it's obvious that the team held them back because obviously the team chooses the availability, thought it was a little weird. And to get into more of like Mitch Marner in Game 7 specifically, I keep seeing this clip floating around. This whole narrative came up today, and I don't mean to defend Mitch Marner, and I also don't want to dump on him completely. I do think, criticism is due for Mitch Marner because he wasn't great. But when you go to the overtime winner, this narrative that it was all his fault, that's just not how hockey works. So Nick, if you could pull up the first screenshot. Yes, he kind of loses Pasternak, and I wish he would stick with him a little bit longer. But as the puck goes down, Rielly has to be the first one to get that puck. And you can put some blame, if you want, on Samsonov for not coming out and playing the puck either. Not playing it, but maybe just hitting it with his stick and, trying to do something. But again, he would be in no man's land. I feel like it's more on Rielly and Samsonov, more so Rielly. You have to read that and not be a sitting duck and get that puck for icing. And Pasternak beats you there. And it's a set play that the Bruins have put together, and we've seen it in the past, and the videos have been floating around on Twitter this morning. And I don't think that's on Mitch Marner. That's not how hockey works. The winger would never go that low into the zone and follow another winger. So this play specifically, I think it's a little too much to be dumping on Marner for that play. But again, criticism for the series, absolutely. And not only this series, but arguably his whole tenure in terms of playoffs.
Yeah, and again, I'll just go through it quickly for you. If you missed the play, you got this, and you got that, and then you have right here. And obviously, people initially were hating on Marner, and then you got hates on Samsonov for not playing the puck. But again, Rielly, he got lost a little bit. He was unable to, cut off, and it was a free goal for David Pasternak, the one who called out by his coach. And I think that's the last time I want to ever see that play on my screen ever again, because that one brings back terrible memories from a couple nights ago. But yeah, there's a lot of criticism to go around for Mitch Marner. He definitely had a bad playoff series, and he's getting paid a lot of money to be a guy who scores in the playoffs, and he did not do that whatsoever. And you see here saying Mitch Marner should have gone down as a legend in Toronto, insanely talented hometown boy, impacts so many facets of the game at an elite level when he's on, but he's shown time and time again that he can't deliver when it really counts, and it's sad, man. And we're going to have lots of videos going over trade rumors and things like that for Mitch Marner, but it seems like I don't know why he hasn't really been able to perform in the playoffs. There's a chance that maybe he needs a change of scenery. And maybe he has a no-move clause, so that's the biggest thing to discuss when you're looking at a trade. But if he thinks he needs a change of scenery to give that extra bit of effort, because it even looks like sometimes, not this specific play, but on the defensive end, he gets lackadaisical, I guess, for lack of a better word, just very, not lazy necessarily, but just like he doesn't really care as much as some of the other guys on the team, like even Benoit is giving it his all. And I understand it, but maybe he just needs, and maybe it's time for both sides to say, hey, this isn't working. It hasn't worked since 2018, or didn't work since, 2018 didn't work in 2018 either, but it hasn't worked for years since the Core 4 has united. And it's time now to just send Marner somewhere else, get a right-handed defenseman, and then build around the other guys and kind of fill the holes that remain without Mitch Marner, because you're paying Mitch Marner all this money and he's not helping you win playoff games.
Yeah, and listen, I hear the argument too about him being injured this year and that might have affected his play. We have a large sample size of the fact that he's been healthy before and you get the same results in the playoffs. And in terms of his new no movement clause, I've seen it all over this morning. Oh, you can't move him. It's impossible, and his contract's up next year. It's not impossible to move somebody who has a no movement clause. You just have to ask for a list of teams, basically. Even if it's one team, you're not going to get the best deal. But if you do want to move on from this player, you can make it work. I think if you at least go to him and again, listen, it's still on him. He could absolutely say no, but it's not impossible. You can put steps in motion to make it work. And you're probably in the situation you're in right now because he should have been, in all honesty, traded last year when he didn't have the no movement clause because you can get whatever deal you want. They're probably going to lose this trade, whatever it is. But the most valuable thing for the Leafs right now, if they are to move on from him, because it looks like he's obviously the odd man out and has been the entire time, is cap space. You need to use that cap space to make the team better. It does matter actually what you get back, but you're never going to get back the skill Mitch Marner brings. The other team is going to win that trade if you make a trade, without saying it is going to happen. But that cap space is so valuable to the Leafs to continue to build the rest of the team out and honestly get some more depth scoring too, because when you have $11 million wrapped up in a guy who scored 3 points in 7 games, you're not going to win a playoff series. And even David Pastrnak, who makes around the same money now, called out by his coach, at least had 5 points in the series and scored the overtime winner in game 7. Big difference there.
Yeah, and the core going forward, which will be something we discuss, is obviously mainly focused around Matthews, Nylander, and then you have some other guys. Even Matthew Nyes showed up. Like, there's still positives to take from the series, but even the emergence of Nyes, I'm not going to say it makes Mitch Marner's impact or impact on the team less valuable, but it maybe allows you to be more willing to. The issue is they didn't trade him when his no move clause wasn't in effect. So now you're going to lose the trade, but you're going to hopefully get back a defenseman, because we did see. I mean, Brett Gilvey made the right moves in general. Labushkin played okay. Joel Edmondson played pretty great, given what he is. But now, hopefully, we get a better defenseman back and use that cap space. Maybe re-sign a Max Domi is probably the number one priority among current Leafs who are already on the team there, and maybe even Tyler Bertuzzi. But I don't know. It's interesting, and you can see here everyone's kind of agreeing they should do it for Mitch Marner as a Maple Leaf, held out for one of the highest AAVs in the league, completely no-showed. The era is over, and it seems like the core 4 era is definitely over. It seems like Mitch Marner is the most obvious guy to be moved, but the complications come with the no-move clause. So any final thoughts before we wrap up? There'll be lots more to discuss about on this topic, but he's not liked around Toronto and really around the NHL right now from people who've just been watching the games.
Yeah, the lack of decision making the last couple of years has really snowballed into a disaster now, because Mitch Marner should have been moved on from last summer. And I think, listen, this is a conversation for a whole different video again, but just to tap into it a bit, I feel like Kyle Dubas was finally about to do something with that, and he was let go, and they stayed with the same core, and you get the same results. And again, listen, only 4 or 3 points, I think, in 7 games this playoff series. It's not good enough, and you're not scoring. The Leafs' problem right now, as everyone's coming to realize, especially this year, some were realizing it last year, it's no longer defense, as everyone's saying, especially from what I saw in this series this year. It's no longer defense. It's no longer goaltending, especially with Wall and perhaps Hill to be coming up. You cannot score in the playoffs, and you have 4 players making $50 million, and you can't score in the playoffs because some of them only score 3 points in a 7-game series. It's not good enough. And they're going to have to make some changes. And it looks like Mitch Marner is going to be the casualty because his contract, they just locked up William Nylander for 8 years. You're not going to trade Austin Matthews. John Tavares is getting older. He probably just rides out the last year of his contract. Who's the odd man out? It's Mitch Marner.
Yep, and that'll be the big question mark going into the offseason, along with tons of other stuff. We'll have you covered all the way through. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. See you tomorrow.